The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Podcast. And of course, it's another edition of The Big Issue. And of course, seated here with me are our in-house analysts, taking you on the big issue together. We have Adebi Adedapo.
Yes, good afternoon.
And of course, Sunday Su Isaiah.
It's nice to be here.
And of course, I'm your regular host, George Jagba. Before we go ahead, I would appeal to you, our viewer, to contribute to this program by sending in your comments. And of course, your comment had always gone a long way to help in setting the agenda for robust discussion on the big issue. And of course, the big issue for today is the Southern governors and endorsement of VAT collections and others. Of course, the governors of the southern part of the country declared their support for states to collect the value-added tax. Of course, this was one of the resolutions reached in a meeting of the Southern Governors Forum held in Enugu. And of course, the decision has heightened the controversy over the collection of VAT following the ruling of a federal high court that the federal government cannot collect VAT, a tax it has been collecting since the military era, though the money is shared by the 3 tiers of government. Of course, following the court ruling, Lagos and Rivers State had passed laws that allowed them to collect VAT in their state. But the Court of Appeal that same Thursday declined to accede to the request of Rivers and Lagos State for the appointment of receiver or manager for the purpose of collecting and keeping VAT in place of the FIRS, pending the resolution of the legal disputes in the matter. The two states had separately canvassed that the order of status quo ante bellum granted on September 10 in favor of FIRS to continue the collection be put on hold in view of the appeal already lodged at the Supreme Court against the order. Well, now that all Southern governors have endorsed VAT collection by state, and the appellate court is saying that status quo ante bellum be maintained, this matter has become a serious case.
It is.
Because with that endorsement by the Southern government, that means we automatically have 17 states now that are saying we will be collecting VAT. What do you have to say in this regard?
Well, it is a good development for our first of all federalism. However, taking you on the issue of governors declaring support for, I think whatever anybody is saying now, either governors or individual governors, it remains in the realm of opinion because the law is the law. And the matter is currently pending before the Court of Appeal and, of course, the Supreme Court. So that the governors have come to give an open endorsement does not necessarily translate to automatic collection of VAT by state governments. Rather, what I would expect the governors or southern state governors, if really this is their collective position and they really want to advance the cause, what I would expect them to do now is to have a backup plan. What we often see is that these state governors from the south, they will come and canvass an opinion, make public statements, but they will not be able to match it up with concrete action. Now, as it is now, the VAT law is a decree of the placed another decree, I think Decree 7 of 1986, which was enacted on, which was a decree on states sales law, sales tax. At this point, there is nothing any governor would say that would change whatever is in the books. So rather what we should be talking about is fidelity to the spirit and letters of what we have in our constitution. When Nigeria returned to democracy in 1999, all decrees were adopted as constitution. So it is the provision of the constitution that has to be followed. If the state governors, Rivers State, Lagos State are putting that particular aspect of our federalism into test, it is a good development. And it is within the ambit of their right to do so. However, remember that the National Assembly can amend the law. So whatever happens in the courts, and I'm aware that the FIRS are speaking to the constitutional review committees of the National Assembly, and they are demanding or appealing to the National Assembly to effect an amendment into the section, the exclusive list, to add the VAT law as part of item 58 of on the exclusive legislative list. That will now exclude state governments from making laws on value-added tax. So I expect by now the state governors from the south will be mobilizing their lawmakers, if indeed they are resolute and collectively resolute on this. I expect them by now to be mobilizing their lawmakers to either support or oppose a possible amendment into it. Now, this is as regards to the issue of law and their own position. But if you are now asking me about my perspective on this issue, you see, I hold the view that government or governance is not run on sympathy. It's not run on it's run by them. However, democracy is a culture, and I think that culture is still evolving in Nigeria. If you look critically into the issue of value-added tax and the crisis it has generated or the controversies it has generated, there you will see an underlying factor of perceived injustice, perceived unfairness in the allocation of these VAT. And you will see that state governors have either complained about the percentage the FIRS is charging as is it operation cost or what have you, or the distribution of this value-added tax. And these complaints have not been addressed over the time. So it is this complaint that now led to the initiative of, let's even look at the books. What does the law say about this? So I just hope, because I also know that states, there's some states definitely have more economic viability than others, and Lagos State alone, I think, accounts for about 50%, if not more, of VAT, followed by FCT and River State. So it is not out of place if it is not late anyway, because already there is awareness now that this thing is this VAT is supposed to be administered by state, and of course the sales law that VAT succeeded in 1993 was administered by the states. So irrespective of without prejudice to whatever is coming from the courts, and irrespective of whatever the decision of the court is, I think this issue can also be looked at with the lens of some political tolerance, and it can as well be resolved. And the laws can also, let's even assume that the Supreme Court eventually now decide in favor of the state court, the laws can be changed. So what we should be talking about is the culture of democracy that compels a sovereign state to observe a reasonable level of fidelity, or a maximum level of fidelity to the books, to the constitution, to the laws of the land. So if we have the constitution amended, and it now empowers the federal government to admit that to manage the value-added tax, it is my hope that we will not be back to square one when the law is operational. But as it stands today, I think whatever anybody is saying, either governors or whoever, still remain within the realm of opinion.
Well, before we go back to the southern governors and their resolutions, let's look at what the Court of Appeal did yesterday. The Court of Appeal denied the prayers by Rivers and Lagos state government to step down. The status quo antebellum, it ordered that should be maintained. Because what those two states say is that since the matter is before the Supreme, the Court of Appeal should step it down. But ordinarily, what is it supposed to be? Wasn't the Court of Appeal wait until the matter is determined by the Supreme Court?
Well, it is not for the council or for the state individual states to dictate to the control. The Congress advance their cases before the courts. Now, but if a motion is appealed at a higher court, it is proper in law that the lower courts will have to wait for the decision of the higher courts. And that is the area the River State and Lagos State government are trying to explore. Remember, FRS went back to the High Courts of River State for they demanded to have the judgment stayed, a stay of execution on that judgment, and the High Courts declined. So they approached the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal, in its own wisdom, says that a status quo should be maintained, which effectively means status quo antebellum, which effectively means that the situation of the situation of things before the court was approached should be reverted. Now, remember that VAT is a continuous tax. You collect it. You will not wait for the court to determine their own the cases before them, to decide the cases before them before you collect tax VAT. So what both states and the federal government, FRS in this case, are trying to beat is who collects the tax today. And I am afraid that the federal government is also aware, and that is the reason why they would approach the National Assembly for a review of the constitution. The federal government, FRS, is aware that they may be fighting a lost battle in the courts. So what appears to me in this situation is that they want to keep the case in the courts while they approach the National Assembly for a review. So whatever happens at the court will eventually become an academic exercise after the law has been changed. And that is why River State government, Lagos State government, they are also trying to fight back. They want that technical stay of execution, although not pronounced. They want it upturned so that they can collect VAT based on the judgment of the High Court of River State.
Okay.
Federal High Court of River State.
Okay, so now that the Southern governors have unanimously endorsed collection of VAT by state, what should we be expecting from their northern counterparts?
Well, the situation will bring mistrust because Nigeria is a country where the center has always been the deciding factor. And if you begin to isolate yourself and say, okay, because of that, because of this, because of that, because of that, it now brings disunity, and I begin to see how the country is actually tilting towards a serious restructuring. Because if you restructure, that is when you will now have every state exploring its own natural resources. And I remember there was a time I told you that there is no state in Nigeria that is not economically viable. Every state in Nigeria, you will see a lot of mineral resources that are untapped. I cited an example of a nickel, just one mineral resources in southern Kaduna that is of a multi-billion dollars, worth of exploring, and these things, it was even a German company that came and made that discovery, where we have geologists, we have institutes, we have a lot of things. We have always been relying on the federal government, relying on things that come, the sharing formula and all that, because this VAT has always been shared between the states. But now that the southern governors have realized that, okay, they are trying to get more money, I think it will be a disservice to other states, because we are one entity. You understand? And we don't have the FIRS have been collecting this VAT for a very long time, and we have to, follow that kind of process until further notice, because even their proposal to the Constitution Amendment Committee, nobody knows where it will fall, because it's unlikely that such a request will be granted, because it's a very serious process involved, and with the interest involved, once it is between North versus South, then you know where the pendulum will swing to.
Well,
Yes.
just like you rightly say, you remember which governor from the north? Is it Gombe governor? Gombe governor said those calling for collection of VAT by state should learn to be their brother's keeper. And I'm beginning to see that there's going to be a sharp division between southern governors and the northern governors, because most of these northern governors are not disposed towards that VAT collection by state.
Yeah.
And in the event where this sharp division comes, it's likely that the country will be polarized within the ethnic, the regional divide.
Yes, because it
Is
no
this good
longer
for
be
our federalism?
no, it's not good, because once these things begin to happen, even within their political party, they will begin to see themselves as regional people. They will begin to have regional interests. So in the polity, you will begin to see certain alignment and realignment as the country move towards 2023. So it will polarize not just the polity, but the unity of the country.
Well, before we continue, let's just quickly take a short break. We'll be back in a moment.
The The big issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Welcome back. We are still on the big issue in leadership podcast, and of course, it is the Southern Governor's endorsement of VAT collection by state and other resolutions made at a meeting in Enugu State. Let's go back to what we're saying. B. Another situation here that while the chairman of the Southern Governors Forum, Rotimi Akeredolu, sang, while he was reading the communique of that meeting in Enugu, he also taxed the governors that were here to enact the open grazing law to do so without much delay. Are we beginning to see a total opposition to the government at the center by this government? Because most of these resolutions they are taking are anti-federal government.
I wouldn't want us to say that.
But of course, the anti-grazing law, the collection of VAT by states.
No. Let's be very practical.
Yes.
Like I said, invoking the spirit and letters of the Constitution should not be seen as opposition to anybody. If the law states that VAT should be administered by the state government, and for some administrative convenience at the time, the federal government is collecting it, And now the state government are saying we want to take charge. If that is the law, if that is the decision arrived at in by those who should interpret the law, I see no reason why anybody should now see it as an opposition to the federal government. On the issue of anti-open grazing law, I think we all know what the background is. We know the level of insecurity states have suffered and state governments have had to confront in the last few years. And when you have challenges, as a responsible government, what you should do is to, look at why the challenges are so, why the challenges are mounting and what you can do to curtail or eradicate those challenges. And in the situation, you will also agree that some criminals have been using the cover of heading to perpetrate crime in every part of Nigeria. And the Katsina state government, who is from the north west, is also in support of a ban of open grazing. So I don't want us to start saying it as south versus north.
No.
I want us to
When I
see
say
it as
opposition and there's anti-federal government, the federal government is not just not. I was just trying to see a situation where if you check, most of these things done are the things that at the end of the day, ordinarily the federal government wouldn't stand for.
but
Of course, because
President
the
Muhammadu Buhari,
government has
President
taken a
Muhammadu
stand on
Buhari
this,
even
set up a
asked-
committee.
set up a committee
Yes,
that
to
of the review of grazing
grazing
reserves.
reserves.
okay. No, so where are the grazing reserves? No, this is the issue. The grazing reserve, in most cases, are only domiciled in the northern part of
We have 25 states in that list of
And
grazing reserves,
so
and
what-
we have only 19 states in the north.
So-
So, are you saying that North now have 25 states?
Well,
No.
until we see the map of that grazing reserve, I have not seen it. But southern governors have already declared that they don't have grazing reserves in their state. That is one. Another people have also argued that it is an archaic system. So now let's not. Let's just look at grazing or herding in the 21st century. For God's sake, should we have cattle roaming the streets? Should we not have a modern system of conducting this business? So if in the light of the security challenges, in fact, I should have expected that this anti-open grazing law should be enacted before now. That the insecurity has thrown up the issues and they can now see that there is a need to ensure that this business is conducted in a modern way as we are in the 21st century. I don't want us to start saying it as an opposition to the federal government. In any case, federal government does not own the cattle. The government is not into cattle business. So why should you now say that the governors are against the government? We should not hide under one finger or behind one finger. In most cases, just like spare part business, it is our brothers from the southeast that are mostly into it. It is the northerners are more into herding and cattle business. And nobody have a problem. No, I don't. We don't. Nobody have a problem about cattle rearing. What we are saying is that if you must herd your cattle in the southern part of the country, this is the law. It just goes further to say that if you want to conduct your business in the FCT now, Abuja Environmental Development, what is it called? I forgot. AEDP, Environmental Development Department. I don't know. Control. Thank you. You will see them chasing orcas on the streets because they want sanity in their city. Would you say that because many of these people who are hawking goods on the streets are from a particular section of the country, then AEDP is against them? I thought we should look at it in a more holistic way and not start peddling the sentiment that is attached to it.
But in your own opinion,
Yes.
collection of VAT by state and the usual way it had been done since the military era, that is the FIROS, an agency of the federal government that collects that. Where do you stand there?
I've just told you that
nobody's
nobody's opinion matter on this matter. My opinion does not matter. Even the opinion of the 19, how many governors did you say they were at Enugu? All of them collectively, their opinion does not matter at this point because it's a legal issue. The courts are there to interpret what the position of the law. So it is the position of the law that should eventually be, we should go by. So if we go with the position of the law, if the Supreme Court eventually says that federal government should administer it, so be it. If the southern governors are so angry, they should sponsor one of their lawmakers to go and raise it at the National Assembly, and they should have the law changed. If they don't have the capacity to change the law, then they should forget about the matter.
Okay, Isua, sir, let me throw this question to you. What is your own personal opinion about the collection of VAT by state? Do you think it will augur well for the country?
The atmosphere for them to even collect the VAT is not there because the federal government have been collecting this, and most of their states don't even have a law empowering them to collect VAT. It's just now that maybe they are clamoring for restructuring. They are now struggling to see how they will enact laws that will give them the credence to be able to collect this VAT. So what they are doing, they are sending a message that look, we are no longer one country. Everybody should begin to think inward and see how he can develop himself. But that they have given a red card, or let me say a yellow card to the federal government because they feel that this money going to the federal government and that the federal government have not been fair in sharing it. So they are against the decision of the federal government, and that is why they want this. And this will invariably, lead to some kind of division and disagreement in the country.
Yes, the governors also reaffirm commitment to structural physical federalism. Most Nigerians feel that this looks like a tacit way of devolving power, gradually devolving power to the regions.
Exactly.
A situation where they had been calling for restructuring, devolution of power to the state, and although before the National Assembly, the Constitution is being amended, perhaps it could. We don't know what the lawmakers are actually planning. Maybe they will come to do the biddings of Nigerians who have been calling for restructuring, devolution of powers. But I think what we are seeing from some of the endorsements and resolutions by the Southern governors is as if they are saying that if there is no congruence of opinion that we should restructure the country, devolve power to the state. The kingdom of God suffered violence, and that violence must take it by force. Don't you think so?
You see, like I said, this is an existing law they're trying to implement. So they have not gone into proper restructuring. Restructuring, as it is now, this VAT issue is not on the exclusive legislative list. Restructuring is even saying that some of the items on the exclusive legislative list should be reduced and placed on the concurrent list. So we're not even there yet. And when we talk about restructuring, people will say nobody is afraid of restructuring. Yet, just how do I put it? Just a shift of administrative position on the issue of VAT rather. Then there is outcry. Oh, you should be a brother's keeper. You should be this. You should be that. That goes to, show that some states, governors of government have not been thinking. Not two states they have the same potentials. I agree with Isua that all the states have economic viabilities, but to what extent have they advanced the resources? Have they advanced the opportunities available to them? FCT is FCT today because it is the state of power. River State and the South State because of the natural resources. And he just talked about Nika. And even the United States where we compare our democracy from, they are not the same. In the northern part of the United States, I think they have more, there is the industrial hub. And the southern part, the agrarian hub. So what we are talking about is whatever it is that is working for you, whatever opportunities that you can advance within your state, explore it.
So
But
citing the United States, do you think United States governors will now gang up against
it is not a gang up. That is the no.
to say that
I
because
don't.
we have the
No,
industry,
no.
we should benefit more than
No,
the other states.
what we are talking about is the law. Nobody, even the federal government, FRS is not even saying that the the River State governor, the Lagos, that they are wrong. It is the law we are talking about. So, and if we cannot remember, we should even. It is an aberration that the governors are allowed the federal government to manage, so to speak, because it was not the arrangement that the federal government should manage it. And the percentage agreed that the state government should have, I think, 50%, the local government should have 35%, and 15% to the federal government. But the state governors have been complaining that that distribution was not even fair enough. Did you listen to the River State governor when they said that about 9 billion naira was collected in the state, and what they were able to get in the month of June or July was about 4 billion? I'm not sure I have the correct figures.
Yes.
So I don't want to quote, but there have been complaints. So if there have been complaints, and the position of the law is that the state government should manage it, and the state government is saying we can now, okay, they were the ones, the state governors agreed at the time that for administrative convenience, the federal government should collect. Now the states are saying that they don't want it again. They can now manage.
Just like Gombe State governor had said. These people pushing for VAT collection by state should learn to be their brother's keeper, because what the federal government was doing was, after bringing this money together. Just like now. Okay, let me give you an instance first. Just like now, it's like having children in the house. Let's assume you have 9 children,
yes,
and they go out there to do work, and then you ask their father say, anything you have, bring it to the table, and then one of the sons that feel that he is making much than the other say, no, I'm not bringing my own to the table again. I beg, I'll be managing my own the family. It's not going to be.
They are now putting his own house.
That is what they want to
So,
do.
it is that feeding bottle. It is that feeding bottle system.
I think what the federal government was getting those back is to get them together.
It's not about
now. Let's
the decision of the governors for the federal government to be sharing this money was collective.
But
So why will you just come and
fair?
start bringing in division?
And say no.
Okay, now
Division
let me bring this
They will
perspective.
have agreed
Let me
as
bring this
governors.
perspective to
You understand? They will have agreed as governors of Nigeria to say, okay, this is what we should do. This is what we should do. If all of them agree, you see, this thing will
Who
work
were the
in
ones
unity.
that agreed? The military administrators agreed. So why are you sounding like?
No.
Listen, let me explain this to you.
Is it the military
Let me
administrators that have been
explain this.
collecting these things in
And
1999?
when the collection of VAT started, I'm telling you that state governors are waking up to the realities now, because the distribution has not been fair, and you are saying they should just allow it be. Are you aware that the challenges of infrastructure, insecurity, and other challenges faces different states are not in the same magnitude?
So, but
Excuse me,
that
please,
give you
excuse me.
the temerity to just wake up one day
It is not waking up
and
one
say
day. You
that
are saying
the
this
agreement governors have come together, to agree that federal government share this money to
I
all
just
of us.
asked you,
And
who are the people who agreed? The issue is this. It is very, very simple. For
Government
instance,
is
if you are talking about road infrastructure, there are trunk-A roads, there are trunk-B roads, and there are trunk-C roads. There are roads that are within the purview of the state governors to manage, and the usage of these roads is dependent on the population, is dependent on the activities of the state. Now, if you are saying that, for instance, the amount of money Lagos State governors or Lagos State government will spend on road infrastructure in a budgeting year, you would not compare it to what other states like Gombe State or Katsina State will spend on, because those roads, the usage are not the same. Do you understand?
This your analysis is confusing.
It's not confusing.
If you talk about Trump A or Trump B road,
the point
it does not mean that roads
is that
that are constructed by state or federal. No, it just depends on how.
The point is that the responsibility. No.
It's about sharing argument. It's about sharing formula.
And the perspective that what, for instance, Lagos state government is spend on infrastructure is not the same thing the states that do not have the population, that are not as economically viable, will spend on infrastructure. So you cannot say that federal government should collect it and share it equitably, and all those ones will go on the other states where they have more people and more economic activities will go and start struggling.
The sharing of oil revenues has been different, and the sharing of VAT has been different. So you won't compare all those things.
FRS has not even come out to challenge the position canvassed by the River State governor that the VAT in the month of June or July, I cannot remember specifically, has not, the way it was shared was not fair enough. FRS hasn't come out to tell us.
Well, that is the much we can take for today's edition of the big issue. At least the certain governors have taken their position on VAT collection, the anti-open grazing laws, and the rest. And of course, there is that possibility that the northern governors will also meet and take their decision on that VAT. And of course, the matter is before the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal. So wait for the outcome of this. You can always send in your opinion to Leadership Podcast through our online medium. And of course, as we see them, we will always present them before the public. Thank you for keeping tab with us. And of course, I'll thank our in-house analyst here for doing a very thorough job in interrogating this matter. Once again, I'm your regular host. Join us same time tomorrow for another edition of The Big Issue. Have a wonderful weekend.